What is Bitcoin price going to do for the remainder of 2025? This year started out with a bang. People were excited. People were sure that the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve was going to be in. Bitcoin was $109,000. People were sure it was going to 140 grand next. I thought it totally could have, but it might not. Turns out it didn't. Turns out it did crash a bit. It went all the way down to $70,000, or just over $70,000. It went down a lot, about a 28-30% or so correction. Bitcoin really crashed, and it really wrecked a lot of the early, not the early people, but a lot of the latecomers, a lot of people that were brand new in their Bitcoin education. So let's zoom out. Let's stop worrying about this short-term crash. Let's focus on the recovery, and let's focus on that question for the next 7 to 10 or whatever months. What is Bitcoin going to do? This is my opinion of what I think is going to happen. What we're looking at here at this chart, this is a chart of three very important things. In the blue line, we have the yield curve, and the red line is we have the federal funds rate, and the black line is the stock market. What do you see? Well, typically what happens historically is that first, the yield curve uninverts, number one. Then number two, the Federal Reserve cuts rates. And then number three, we have a stock market decline. That right there you're looking at is the dot-com bubble that burst. Then we have the great financial crisis that burst, the housing market, right? First, what happened? The exact same thing. Yields normalized first, then second, the Federal Reserve cut rates, and then third, the market crashed, right? That happened the same time with COVID. First, the market yield curve was easing. The market was already pretty wobbly when COVID changed the world. And then, of course, we had the flash crash, which, of course, was then quickly V-shaped reversed with the money printing bonanza of 2020. And now what we've had is a very firm, very strong reversal of a very long yield curve inversion. Rates have started coming down due to the Federal Reserve, and we are currently undergoing a crash. And so the question is, will the crash continue? I think it is very possible. Okay. Howard Lutnick is the Secretary of Commerce for Donald Trump. Lutnick a few weeks ago was saying, there's never going to be a recession. America's not about recessions. I wouldn't bet on a recession. Never going to happen. Not going to happen. Then now more recently he's been saying, I wouldn't mind a recession. A recession's okay. I mean, Trump's economy doesn't really kick in until Q3 2025 anyway, right? My point is that the Trump administration is preparing the markets for more sideways, if not downwards chop. Why? In my opinion, because Trump wants to have he wants to lower rates. He wants to have chaos so that then he can come and be the savior, pump markets, pump assets up, and, fix the world, fix America, fix the economy, blah, 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 whatever. The point is, and the people in power are signaling that, hey, maybe this thing is not going to do so well the first half of 2025. Stocks under Trump's administration so far have been disappointing to investors. So I think it is definitely totally possible that the market could stay flat, maybe even negative over the next few months. However, I'm not planning on it. Why? Because at no logical point in these other scenarios did it make sense to be trying to time the market, right? Like, try to time that. Look at that chart. Look at that flash crash. Were you predicting COVID, right? Like, let's say you got lucky and you looked at the yield curve and the Federal Reserve lowering rates and you sold the top. Good for you. Wow, you're a magician. But guess what? I've met people that have successfully traded that crash in 2020, and even they say that they only took advantage of half of the crash or whatever, right? So even with trading, it's not worth it. Don't be trading. Focus on holding for the long term. And so I don't care if there is a recession or not, because number one, there's no guarantee there is a recession. Number two, even if we have a recession, there is no guarantee it lasts long. And number three, even if there is a recession, and even if it does last a while, there could be so much money printing that asset prices don't fall. Yeah, sure, maybe the GDP falls and maybe job and unemployment, is in trouble, but that doesn't mean that assets fall necessarily, right? I remember buying my first house in May of 2020, right after that crash. People thought I was crazy. You're like, oh, look, the recession, the world's over. But I remember saying at the time, like, well, yeah, but the houses still go up because we're printing money. And surely enough, it did, right? So my point is this, that sure, there's non-zero chance we have a recession. And sure, there's a non-zero chance it lasts a while. But there's also a non-zero chance that we just print Armageddon in the face of that recession and asset prices just rip. So I don't focus on that. I'm saying that to cover all my bases. There is a chance that the first part of the year is flat. However, even if it were, and I don't think it's going to, but even if it were, look at the Bitcoin price and power law support. This is a chart from APSK32 on Twitter. It's a great chart. It shows on a logarithmic scale Bitcoin between $1 and $250,000. You can see oscillation here of the power law support between 0 to 6 years, right? Bitcoin, when it's close to 0 years ahead of power law support, that means that it's typically a really good time to buy. When Bitcoin is about 3 to 5 years ahead of its power law support, typically that means that it's not the best time to buy, and Bitcoin probably is going to return back to its typical growth at some point in the future, right? Now, power law, has a lot of backing behind it, I think, but in nominal terms, it may not, right? This is really important to keep in mind. Again, just because Bitcoin is a few years ahead of its supposed power law support for that moment in time, that doesn't mean that there's a 0% chance that the dollar just hyperinflates, or at the very least has significant inflation. So I wouldn't trade based on this, but I would have a long-term horizon based on this. And here's the crazy thing. Let's say, even if we have a recession, which we may not, but let's say we did, theoretically, even if we did, Bitcoin could remain flat for the next 6 months, and we still reasonably could end up 5 years ahead of the power law trend line by the end of 2025. Where would that take us? If you're doing the math, well, look at the chart here. That would take us to about $250,000 of Bitcoin. Wouldn't that be crazy if Bitcoin is just flat or marginally up or down over the course of the next 6 months, and then all of a sudden it goes kaboom? The last 4 or 5 months of the year, it just rips faces off. That's totally possible, right? And in fact, that makes logical sense. The longer the sideways chop, the more explosive the upwards rally is going to be. There's also another field of thought, which is probably more I'm aligned with right now, that I don't think we're going to range for 6 months. The United States has a strategic reserve. They made it very clear they have an intention of buying more Bitcoin and, tax neutral ways or cost-effective ways, right? We have the Czech Republic that's debating buying $7 billion worth of Bitcoin. We have Bit bonds being proposed, which is another $200 billion of potential buying. Like, we literally have bigger players than we've ever had before. Could we stay sideways for 6 months? Sure. Could Bitcoin fall a bit more over the next 6 months? Sure. Is it still reasonable to think Bitcoin could hit $250,000 by the end of this year, even if those things happen? Of course. And let's say those things don't happen. What if we don't have a recession? What if we print more money than what we're expecting? What if the bull market actually hasn't begun? Which I think is totally reasonable, because if you price this power law support in terms of gold instead of in terms of dollars, Bitcoin looks even cheaper than what it is, right? Bitcoin is even closer to zero if you denominate this chart in terms of gold price instead of in terms of dollar price, which I personally think is a much more accurate way to measure this. But I'm being a bit more of a bear here and being a little more conservative by including it in terms of dollars. The point is, no matter how you slice it, stop worrying about what's going to happen next week or next month. It doesn't matter. Bitcoin's going to do what it's going to do. It doesn't matter if you like it or you don't like it. All we can do is think in terms of probabilities, and all we can do is accept what's going to happen is going to be what happens, right? 5 years ahead on October 1st of 2025 is $276,000. Okay, I'm not saying that's a prediction. I'm saying that's an if-then statement. If Bitcoin hits 5 years ahead on October 1st, then it will be $276,000. Assuming we're pricing in fiat, by the way, which is probably going to be depreciated even more by then. So it could be even higher. It could be over 300 grand. That's something really to think about. I have no idea what it's going to do, but I do believe Bitcoin is a perpetual asymmetric bet in your favor. I don't care what the Fed does. I don't care what the stock market does. I don't care what the yield curve inverts, doesn't invert, or goes in loop-de-loops. Bitcoin is a long-term, multi-year, multi-decade, multi-generational, multi-millennia kind of asset. I don't care if there's a recession this year or not. So that's what I think. Something else I think is that I think you should stop staring at your screen and worrying about what the future of Bitcoin price is going to do the next few months. You should get outside and make friends, okay? I've been promoting this event a lot. I would really love to have you join. There's about 30 people going so far to this event. It's going to be an awesome time, a very family-friendly, family-oriented kind of event. This is not your typical Bitcoin conference. This is not a typical Bitcoin meetup. Unlike a conference where you're in some hotel room, spending a bunch of money in some big city, flying in, flying out, and this is a much more intimate, much more educational, in my opinion, kind of event. You're going to meet Bitcoiners that have been in Bitcoin a long time here. You're going to meet people that are brand new to Bitcoin and be able to talk with them, right? It's going to be a really fun event. Food, transportation, lodging, all that logistics are covered for you. We're going to hike every day, see some of the most beautiful sights in all of the Western United States, incredible gorges, rivers, mountains. No matter if you're a new hiker, experienced hiker, it's going to be a lot of outdoor fun. We have some exciting things planned. And so if you're somebody, whether you like camping or if you like staying in the resort we have one of the 50 best and most beautiful scenic resorts according to National Geographic in the world rented. It's an absolutely beautiful place, very event friendly, and it's going to be a really, really fun time. You're going to leave this event with more Bitcoin knowledge, more memories, and more people to call friends. So if you want Bitcoin friends, I don't know what better sales pitch you want. You should join us at Bitcoin Zion. Text the phone number on the screen, make new friends in Bitcoin, and make memories to last a lifetime. The one thing you can't buy with more Bitcoin is more memories. You can buy things that can make more memories, but you can't buy more memories. So thank you for your time. Keep in mind, no matter what the volatility has, and I think there is a possibility we go down. I think right now is the most probable time of the last 5 years to have a recession. So if there's going to be one, I think it's going to be in the next 6 months, but I'm not trading Bitcoin based on it. I'm just holding, because even if we have a recession, it doesn't mean that prices go down. And even if prices do go down or stay flat, it's still totally possible we could theoretically be looking at a $2 to maybe even over $300,000 Bitcoin at some point this year. I'm not betting on that either, right? I'd be totally content if we only hit 150 grand. And there's also a non-zero chance that Trump goes mega ballistic on being a triple Bitcoin maxi. America buys 5 million Bitcoin this year. That is a non-zero possibility you have to prepare for. So whatever concern you have of the downside, be 10 times more concerned of the upside, because there's no guarantee saying that Bitcoin won't just shoot up to $1 million in the next 6 to 18 months. That is totally possible. So focus on the things you can control. You can control your time, you can control your friendships, and you can control texting the phone number on the screen to join us at Zion, because that's going to be a really fun time. And I think that's what's most important, making memories, because there's always going to be another chart to stare at. There's always going to be another YouTube video to stare at. There's always going to be some talking head to say, oh, this is what I think is going to happen. They don't have any clue what's going to happen, including me. But I do know that you will enjoy this event. So feel free to reach out. Wish you all the best. I'll see you in the next video.